Now let's get into part 2 of chapter 1, week 2. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so now we'll talk about models, mass communication models and social media models. So our traditional mass communication model, this example of the advertisement on television would fit into that model. We'll talk about the ins and outs of that in a moment. This really refers to, or this refers to how we think about mass media in terms of radio, newspaper, TV. Whereas the social media communication model more so refers to like those social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, X, where we have that interactivity and different functions that we utilize outside of those mass media like TV, newspaper, etc. So the Coca-Cola TV advertisement is an example of traditional mass communication, and the Instagram ad on the right for Coca-Cola is an example of the social media communication model. So let's talk a little bit about the traditional communication model first. We see here that media corporations like broadcasting companies, for example, disseminate identical messages to a large audience. And this is review for you if you've taken COMM 105 in the past, which I think is a prerequisite for this course. So this is pretty basic things that this might be a refresher on. And then we also see this in terms of advertisements before the internet and social media. So advertisements on social media now you can interact with, whereas advertisements in the newspaper you can't, right? You can't share an advertisement with your buddy if you have a print newspaper unless you mail it, and that's just not logical as much as it is if you share it on social media. So this is a pretty linear model here. We have other models that we won't go into right now, such as Schramm's mass communication model, where we do have that feedback, but it's delayed. But basically, we have our sender of the message. So let's say Coca-Cola, the message, drink Coca-Cola, the channel, TV, newspaper, radio, and the receiver, which is the consumer, you. And then you have a certain level of delayed feedback, but even then it's so delayed that is it going to be impactful? Probably not. So this is a one-way interaction where the sender controls the messages. If you think about some explosive PR campaigns that didn't really hit the mark on social media, those get greater consequences more quickly than, for example, TV commercials or newspaper ads. And there's just minimal feedback that's possible here, unless people start talking about it on social media, right? Here's another example, just like local paper print newspaper. So your sender of the message would be the New York Times. The message would be the different articles in the newspaper, the channel, the paper itself. And then the audience of the paper, the people who buy the paper, have a subscription to the paper. That's your receiver. So that's pretty basic stuff and is probably review for you. I'll stop sharing and move on to a brief history of social media.